Death has a way of bringing out the worst in families. I learned this truth watching my father's face on the video call, his sunken cheeks and yellowed skin telling me more than his carefully chosen words ever could. "Sierra, I need you to come home," he said, his voice carrying none of its former judicial authority. "There are things we need to discuss, things I should have said years ago." I stared at his image on my phone, noting how the hospital lighting cast harsh shadows across his face. "Is Charlotte coming too?" "Your sister will be there." A weak smile crossed his lips. "The whole family." The whole family. 3 simple words that made my stomach clench. I hadn't been in the same room with all of them since Christmas 2 years ago, when Mother had made her usual cutting remarks about my career choices, and Charlotte had showcased her latest real estate triumph. "When?" "Tomorrow evening. Please, Sierra, it's important." I watched him struggle to sit up straighter in the hospital bed, his dignity intact even as his body failed him. The great Judge Mason Thompson, reduced to pleading with his eldest daughter. "I'll be there," I said, knowing I'd hate myself either way. After ending the call, I sat at my desk, ignoring the stack of HR reports demanding my attention. The office around me hummed with the usual startup energy, developers arguing over code, the espresso machine whirring, someone's victory dance over a successful deployment. None of it touched me. My phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. "Daddy told you about tomorrow? Don't be late. Mother's already stressed enough." Of course she was concerned about Mother's stress levels. Charlotte had always been the perfect daughter, the one who understood the importance of maintaining appearances. I typed back a simple, "I'll be there," and dropped the phone in my drawer. That evening, I pulled up to my childhood home. Its Georgian columns and manicured lawn, screaming old money and careful preservation. Mother's roses still lined the circular driveway, their perfection achieved through ruthless pruning of any imperfect blooms. Ryan, Charlotte's husband, opened the door before I could knock. "Sierra," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "You're the last to arrive." "Traffic," I lied, following him into the formal living room, where the family tableau awaited me. Mother perched on her favorite armchair, her silver hair arranged just so, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Charlotte sat on the sofa, perfectly poised in her designer dress, while Father occupied his old leather recliner, looking smaller than I remembered. "Sierra," Mother said, managing to pack volumes of criticism into those 2 syllables. "We've been waiting." "I'm here now." I took the only remaining seat, an uncomfortable straight-backed chair that had always been reserved for guests. "Father, you wanted to talk to us?" He cleared his throat, his hands trembling slightly as he reached for the glass of water beside him. "Yes, I've made some decisions about the future, about the inheritance." Charlotte's spine stiffened. Mother's knuckles whitened around her teacup. "I've changed my will," Father continued, his voice growing stronger, "and I want to explain why before the lawyers get involved." The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. I watched Charlotte exchange a quick glance with Mother, saw Ryan shift uncomfortably in his seat. "Sierra," Father said, turning to face me directly, "you're getting the majority of the estate." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the soft clink of Mother's teacup as it slipped from her fingers and shattered on the hardwood floor. The shards of Mother's teacup lay scattered across the floor like the pieces of our family's carefully maintained facade. No one moved to clean them up. "This is ridiculous," Charlotte broke the silence, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Daddy, you can't be serious. I'm the one who's been here, handling everything while Sierra ran away to play office politics in her little startup." Father's hand tightened on his armrest. "I've made my decision." "Mason," Mother interjected, her composure cracking. "Think about what you're doing. Sierra hasn't shown any interest in preserving the family legacy. She doesn't understand our responsibilities to the community." I watched them, these people who shared my blood but had always felt like strangers. "I understand plenty," I said. "I understand that Charlotte's been managing your investment portfolio into the ground while pretending everything's fine." Charlotte's face flushed, How dare you? The Wilson property, I continued. The downtown development project. Did you think I wouldn't find out about those losses? Ryan shifted in his seat, and I caught a flicker of something in his eyes. Relief? Fear? Before I could analyze it, Father started coughing, harsh and wet. Mother rushed to his side with a handkerchief, shooting me an accusatory glare. This is exactly why, Father wheezed between coughs. Sierra sees what others pretend not to notice. She sees what she wants to see, Charlotte snapped, just like she always has, playing the victim while judging everyone else. I stood up, my hands trembling. I'm not playing anything. But you've always been good at games, haven't you, Charlotte? Like the game where you convinced Mother that I was responsible for your DUI in college. That's ancient history, Mother cut in. Charlotte has grown into a responsible adult, while I what? The words tasted bitter. While I built my own career, instead of riding Daddy's connections. While I refused to pretend everything was perfect. Father raised his hand, silencing us all with the gesture he'd used countless times in his courtroom. The decision is made. The papers are signed. Sierra will inherit controlling interest in the family trust and the majority of my personal assets. Charlotte stood up so quickly, her chair scraped against the hardwood. Then I'll contest it. You're clearly not in your right mind. You can try, Father said quietly. But my doctors have certified my mental competency, and the documentation is ironclad. I've had months to prepare this. Months. The word hit me like a physical blow. He'd known about his condition for months and hadn't told me. How long? I asked. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, he replied. 3 months, maybe less. Mother made a small, broken sound. Ryan moved to comfort Charlotte, but she shrugged off his touch. I noticed his hand lingering in the air for a moment too long before dropping. There's more, Father continued. Sierra, I need you to take over as executor of the estate, effective immediately. The room erupted. Mother began crying quietly into her hands. Charlotte stormed out, the front door slamming behind her. Ryan hesitated, looking between the door and me, with an unreadable expression before following his wife. I remained standing, watching Father's face. He looked older than he had on the video call, more fragile, but his eyes were clear and determined. Why now? I asked. Why me? He gestured for me to come closer. When I did, he took my hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Because you're the only one who ever questioned anything. The only one who saw through the lies we told ourselves. He paused, fighting for breath. And because I need someone who can handle what comes next. What comes next? A shadow crossed his face. There are things about this family, about the money. Things you'll need to know. But not tonight. He released my hand. Go home. Review the papers my lawyer will send tomorrow. And Sierra? His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Don't trust anyone, not even your mother. I left the house in a daze, the weight of his words settling around my shoulders like a heavy cloak. As I reached my car, I saw Charlotte and Ryan arguing in the shadows of the garden, their gestures angry, but their voices too low to hear. Something was very wrong with this family, and I was finally going to find out what. The lawyer's office smelled of leather and old money. I spread the documents across the mahogany desk, each page revealing another layer of my father's paranoia, or perhaps his foresight. Miss Thompson, the lawyer's voice pulled me from my study. There's something else, a private letter your father left for you. The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Before I could open it, my phone buzzed. Charlotte's name flashed on the screen, followed by a string of missed calls from Mother. A text from Ryan appeared. We need to talk. Alone. It's about Charlotte. I tucked the envelope into my bag and headed for the door, but the lawyer cleared his throat. Miss Thompson, about the offshore accounts. Send everything to my email. I cut him off. I'll review it tonight. The coffee shop Ryan chose sat in a forgotten corner of downtown, far from Charlotte's usual haunts. He was already there, hands wrapped around an untouched cup, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. Your sister's planning something, he said, before I could sit down. She met with lawyers yesterday, 3 of them. Of course she did. I settled into the chair across from him. Why are you telling me this? His fingers tapped against the cup. Because she's not just going after the inheritance. She's going to try to destroy you first. And you're suddenly on my side? I'm on my own side. He leaned forward, voice dropping. Charlotte's been embezzling from her clients, using their investment funds to cover her losses. When it comes out, if it comes out, when, he insisted. She's getting sloppy, desperate, and she's planning to pin it all on you. My coffee arrived, and I watched the steam rise while processing his words. Why should I believe you? Because I'm tired. The admission seemed to deflate him. Tired of pretending. Tired of watching Charlotte tear people apart to get what she wants. He pulled out his phone, pulled up an email. Look, the screen showed a draft of a letter, supposedly from me to one of Charlotte's biggest clients, suggesting inappropriate use of funds. The forgery was good, very good. She's going to send this next week, Ryan said. Unless what? Unless you sign over your inheritance rights now, before father dies. I pushed back my chair. You're working with her. No, save it. I stood up, but he grabbed my wrist. Sierra, wait. There's more. About mother, about why father really changed the will. A shadow fell across our table. Charlotte stood there, her designer handbag clutched like a weapon. Well, isn't this cozy? Ryan dropped my wrist, as if burned. Charlotte, I was just trying to warn my dear sister. Her smile was razor sharp. Or maybe trying to secure your own escape plan. The coffee shop had gone quiet, other patrons pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. I gathered my things, but Charlotte blocked my path. You always wanted what was mine, she hissed. First Daddy's attention, now my husband. Your paranoia is showing, Charlotte. I kept my voice steady. Along with your desperation. Desperate, she laughed, high and brittle. I'm not the one sneaking around with my sister's husband. I wonder what mother will think when she hears about this. Tell her whatever fantasy you want. I've seen the real numbers, Charlotte. The ones you've been hiding. Her face paled slightly before she recovered. You don't know anything. 300,000 missing from the Wilson account. The downtown project's mysterious shortfall. Should I continue? Ryan stood up, moving between us. Both of you, stop. Charlotte turned on him with frightening speed. Sit down, Ryan, unless you want everyone to know about your little side project. I watched him deflate, sinking back into his chair. Another piece clicked into place. Charlotte hadn't just been controlling the family money. She'd been controlling everyone through their secrets. This isn't over, she said, turning back to me. You have no idea what you're up against. As she stormed out, I pulled Father's unopened letter from my bag. Whatever truth he'd tried to tell me was in here, and suddenly I was terrified to read it. Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I tried to warn you. No, I said. You tried to save yourself. I left him there, the letter burning a hole in my bag, wondering who else in my family was plotting my downfall. Father's letter trembled in my hands, its contents burning through my carefully constructed defenses. The hospital room's fluorescent lights made the words swim on the page, but their meaning was crystal clear. Sierra? Father's voice was weaker today. You read it? The Thompson Foundation was a fraud. The words felt like acid. All those charitable donations, the scholarships, the community projects, they were just fronts for laundering money? He closed his eyes. Your grandfather started it. I inherited more than just a name. And Charlotte's been using the same accounts. She doesn't know the whole truth. Your mother made sure of that. He reached for my hand. I tried to protect you both. The door opened, and Mother swept in with Charlotte close behind. Their timing, as always, was impeccable. Family dinner tonight, Mother announced. The Carmichaels will be there, and the Hendersons, the pillars of local society. Of course. I'm not coming, I said. Charlotte's smile was pure venom. Oh, but you must. After all, we have so much to discuss. Father's grip on my hand tightened. A warning. The restaurant was exactly Mother's style. All crystal and old money whispers. The Carmichaels and Hendersons were already seated, their faces professionally concerned about Father's health. I recognized James Henderson from the Foundation's board. "Sierra," he said warmly, "we were just discussing your sister's remarkable work with the Foundation's youth program." Charlotte beamed. "It's really about giving back to the community." I took a slow sip of water. "Interesting. Which community would that be? The one here or the one in the Cayman Islands?" The table went silent. Mother's fork clattered against her plate. "I've been reviewing the Foundation's records," I continued. "Fascinating reading." "Sierra." Mother's voice could have frozen hell. "This is hardly the time." "Actually, it's perfect timing." Charlotte interrupted, her composure intact. "I was going to wait, but since my sister brings it up." She pulled out a folder. "I've discovered some disturbing transactions, unauthorized access to client accounts, data breaches, all traced back to one person." She slid documents across the table, emails, bank statements, all with my digital fingerprints. "This is impossible," I started. But James Henderson was already examining the papers, his frown deepening. "These are serious allegations," he said. "If true, the Foundation could face significant legal exposure." Mother dabbed her lips with her napkin. "Perhaps Sierra should step down as executor of the estate, for everyone's protection." The trap snapped shut. I looked at Father, but he was slumped in his wheelchair, either unable or unwilling to intervene. "You forged these," I said to Charlotte. "Did I?" She turned to Ryan. "Darling, didn't you witness Sierra accessing these accounts last week? At that coffee shop meeting she insisted on having with you." Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. Yes, she wanted information about the Foundation's accounts." The betrayal was complete. They'd orchestrated everything, from Ryan's warning to this public execution of my reputation. I stood up, my chair scraping back. "You want the truth about the Foundation? About where the money really goes?" "Sierra." Father's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't." Charlotte's smile faltered slightly. Mother's hand shook as she reached for her wine. "The truth," I said, "is in Father's letter, the one explaining why he really changed his will. Should I share that with everyone?" Mother stood up so quickly, she knocked over her glass. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like blood. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in private," she said to the stunned guests. I walked out of the restaurant, their murmured excuses fading behind me. In the parking lot, Ryan caught up to me. "Sierra, wait. Save it for your wife. You don't understand. Charlotte has evidence about my own dealings." I had no choice. I turned to face him. "There's always a choice, and I'm making mine." My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Need help uncovering the truth. I know what really happened at the Foundation. Meet tomorrow," followed by an address. Behind me, I could hear Charlotte's heels clicking on the pavement. Time to choose. Keep running or start fighting back. I saved the number. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. The address led me to a dingy bar on the wrong side of town. Dylan Reeves sat in a corner booth, looking exactly like an ex-cop should. Weathered face, careful eyes, and a glass of untouched whiskey. "The Thompson Foundation's been on my radar for years," he said after I sat down. "But your family's lawyers are good at burying bodies. Metaphorically speaking, I hope." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Your father was smart, keeping you away from the Foundation. Charlotte wasn't so lucky." I placed Father's letter on the table. "He claims the money laundering started with my grandfather. It goes deeper." Dylan pulled out his phone, showed me a series of photographs. Charlotte meeting with men I didn't recognize. Mother entering buildings that didn't match her usual social circle. Ryan carrying briefcases to private airfields. "The Foundation's just the surface," Dylan said. "Your sister's been moving money for some dangerous people. People who won't appreciate her recent creative accounting." My throat went dry. "How dangerous?" "The kind that make problems disappear permanently." A text lit up my phone. Charlotte, we need to talk. Now. Mother's having one of her episodes. It's a trap, Dylan said, reading my expression. Obviously. I stood up anyway. But Mother's episodes aren't something to ignore. You go running every time they call. You'll never break free. I'm not running. I'm gathering ammunition. I pulled out my checkbook. How much to keep digging? His rate was steep, but fair. As I wrote the check, he grabbed my wrist. There's something else. Your father's cancer diagnosis. I've seen his medical records. The timeline doesn't match what he told you. The house was dark when I arrived, except for the library. I found Mother alone, nursing a gin and tonic. Father's old case files spread across his desk. Charlotte's not here, she said without looking up. She lied about my episode. I know? Do you? She finally met my eyes. Do you really know anything, Sierra? I know about the foundation, about Charlotte's creative financing, about Father's real diagnosis timeline. She took a long sip. Your father was trying to protect you. We all were. By making me the executor, by putting a target on my back, by keeping you away from all of it. She stood, unsteady. But Charlotte, she's in too deep. She needed the inheritance to cover her mistakes. When your father changed the will, a floorboard creaked behind me. I turned to find Charlotte in the doorway, Ryan hovering behind her like a shadow. Mother, Charlotte's voice was ice. You're drunk. Go to bed. I'm done covering for you, Mother said. Done watching you destroy everything we built. Charlotte laughed, high and brittle. Everything you built? You mean everything you stole? Everything you laundered? Charlotte, Ryan warned. But she was beyond hearing. Sierra gets to play innocent while I clean up everyone's messes. Charlotte advanced into the room. I found the real records, Mother, all of them, including what really happened to Grandfather. Mother's glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood. What happened to Grandfather? I asked. Ask Mother, Charlotte spat. Ask her why Father really changed his will. Ask her what she's been blackmailing him with all these years. Mother lunged for her purse, but Charlotte was faster. She pulled out a USB drive. Everything's here. Every dirty secret. Every transaction. Every death. Deaths? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Give me that, Mother hissed. Or what? You'll arrange another convenient accident? Like Grandfather's? Ryan stepped forward. Charlotte, stop. This isn't— Shut up. She whirled on him. You think I don't know about your plans, your secret meetings with Sierra? I backed toward the door, my phone heavy in my pocket. Dylan's number was just a button away. Nobody's leaving, Charlotte said, pulling something else from her purse. The gun looked absurdly small in her manicured hands. Not until we decide what happens to the evidence. All of it. Mother sank into Father's chair. Ryan pressed himself against the bookshelf. And I realized that everything, the inheritance, the foundation, my family's legacy, had been built on quicksand. Now I had to choose, family loyalty or justice. There was no middle ground left. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me as I ran, Dylan's warning still ringing in my ears. Father's room number blurred past. 414, 415, 416. I rounded the corner and froze. Charlotte stood outside Father's room, her designer suit replaced by wrinkled clothes from yesterday. When she saw me, her hand moved toward her purse. He's asking for you, she said, voice raw. After everything, he still wants you. Inside, machines beeped steadily. Father looked smaller than ever, drowning in white sheets. Mother sat beside him, her perfect posture finally broken. Sierra. His voice was barely a whisper. The USB drive is safe, I said, moving closer. Dylan has copies of everything. Charlotte's sharp intake of breath behind me, Mother's hands tightening on her armrests. Then it's over, Father said. The foundation, the accounts, all of it. Not quite. I pulled out my phone, showed him the email I'd received an hour ago. The FBI wants to talk. About Grandfather's death. Mother stood so quickly her chair toppled. You didn't. She did. Charlotte's laugh held no humor. Little Sierra finally grew a spine. Did you tell them everything? About Ryan's offshore accounts? About Mother's special arrangements with the Foundation's board? Charlotte, Father warned. But it triggered a coughing fit that left him gasping. A nurse appeared, checking monitors. He needs rest. Family can return during visiting hours. We're not finished, I said. Oh, but we are. Charlotte's smile was deadly. Check your phone, sister dear. The message was from Dylan. They found me. Get out now. What did you do? The same thing Mother did when Grandfather got too curious. Charlotte's hand emerged from her purse, not with a gun this time, but a phone. Made a call to some very interested parties. Mother moved between us. Both of you, stop. Mason he needs to know the truth, I cut in. About how you and Grandfather started laundering money for the cartels. About how you killed him when he wanted out. I protected this family. Mother's composure shattered. Everything I did was to protect us. Father's monitors started beeping faster. The nurse returned with reinforcements, herding us out. In the hallway, Charlotte grabbed my arm. You have 1 hour. Drop the FBI investigation, hand over the USB drive, or Dylan Reeves won't be the only casualty. You're bluffing. Am I? She showed me her phone screen. A live video feed of Ryan tied to a chair, blood trickling from his temple. Mother might have started this game, but I learned to play it better. My phone buzzed. An unknown number sending coordinates. Below it, a message. Your PI is still alive. For now. Tick-tock, Sierra. Charlotte's heels clicked down the corridor. 1 hour to choose. Justice or blood. I slumped against the wall, the weight of 20 years of family secrets crushing me. Mother emerged from Father's room, her face ashen. He's asking for you again, she said. Before the end. Is that what Grandfather asked for? Before your interested parties got to him. She flinched. You don't understand. The things they threatened to do, I made the only choice I could. And now Charlotte's making the same choice. She's protecting the family, like I did. No, I straightened up. She's protecting herself, and she's going to get Ryan killed, just like you got Grandfather killed. Mother's carefully maintained facade crumbled. Then save him. Save them both. Give Charlotte what she wants. My phone buzzed again. New coordinates, different from the first. A choice. Go after Dylan or save Ryan. I couldn't do both in an hour. The FBI will be here soon, I said. I can't stop that now. Then we're all going down. Mother's smile was bitter. Is that what you wanted? To destroy everything? I looked through the window at Father, his breathing growing more labored. The machines told a story of endings, of time running out, of choices narrowing to impossible points. No, I said. I wanted the truth, and now I have to live with it. I turned away from Mother, from Father's room, from the weight of legacy and lies. I had 1 hour to make an impossible choice, and the clock was already ticking. The abandoned warehouse loomed against the night sky, its broken windows reflecting the city lights like shattered mirrors. I clutched the USB drive in one hand, my phone in the other. 20 minutes left. Dylan's coordinates led here, so did Ryan's. It couldn't be coincidence. A figure emerged from the shadows. Charlotte, still in her wrinkled clothes, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. You actually came alone. Where are they? She gestured toward the warehouse door. After you, sister dear. Inside, emergency lights cast sickly yellow shadows across rusted machinery. Ryan sat tied to a chair in the center, head bowed, no sign of Dylan. The drive, Charlotte demanded, hand outstretched. First Ryan. That's not how this works. She pulled out her phone. 1 call, and your PI gets a bullet instead of just a beating. Movement caught my eye. A shadow shifting behind a column. Dylan's signal, just like we'd planned. You know what's funny? I stepped closer to Charlotte. You're so busy playing Mother's games, you forgot to check who else might be playing. Her eyes narrowed. What are you? The FBI isn't coming in an hour, Charlotte. They're already here, have been since Dylan called them this morning. Ryan's head snapped up. Charlotte's phone slipped slightly. You're lying. Like you lied about having Dylan. That's him behind the column, by the way. Been recording everything since I walked in. Charlotte spun around, gun appearing from her purse. The shadows shifted again. But not Dylan this time. Men in tactical gear emerged from multiple directions, weapons raised. Federal agents, drop the weapon. Charlotte's laugh turned hysterical. You stupid self-righteous bitch, you have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done. I held up the USB drive. This isn't just about the foundation anymore. It's about grandfather's murder, about all the other accidents mother arranged. Drop the weapon now. The agents moved closer. You want the truth? Charlotte's gun swung between me and the agents. Here's the truth. Mother didn't kill grandfather. I did. The warehouse went silent, except for Ryan's sharp intake of breath. I was 16, Charlotte continued, her voice cracking. I found his records, saw what he was planning. He was going to turn evidence over to the FBI, destroy everything. So I called Mother's business associates, myself, proved I could be trusted. Charlotte, Ryan's voice was barely audible. What did you do? What I had to do. She whirled toward him. What I've always done. While you plotted your escape and Sierra played innocent, I kept this family alive. By becoming a murderer? By being strong. The gun shook in her hand. Mother taught me that strength means doing whatever it takes. But you, she turned back to me. You always got to be weak, protected, special. No, I said quietly. I got to be free. Her finger tightened on the trigger. 3 shots rang out simultaneously. Charlotte crumpled. Blood bloomed across her designer blouse as agents swarmed forward. Ryan's chair toppled in the chaos. And through it all, I stood frozen, watching my sister's eyes go dim. Sierra, Dylan appeared beside me, very much alive and unharmed. It's over, is it? I watched the agents cut Ryan free, heard sirens approaching outside. Mother's still out there. The cartel connections are being handled. Your father's deathbed confession gave us everything we needed. I turned sharply. Father's dead. 10 minutes ago, he held on long enough to make things right. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand. Years of secrets, lies, and blood, all reduced to digital files. I handed it to Dylan, watching as evidence techs swarmed the scene. Charlotte was still breathing when they loaded her into the ambulance. Her eyes found mine as they wheeled her past. I did it for us, she whispered. No, I replied. You did it for yourself. The warehouse doors slammed shut behind her, and with them, the last remnants of my family's facade. All that was left now was truth, cold, hard, and irreversible. Ryan approached, rubbing his wrists where the ropes had cut in. What happens now? I watched the red and blue lights fade into the distance. Now we live with what we've done. The family estate stood empty now, its windows dark against the setting sun. I unlocked the front door one last time, stepping into shadows that held 34 years of memories, some true, some carefully constructed lies. Mother's arrest had made headlines. Charlotte's trial was pending. The foundation's collapse had sent shockwaves through the community, exposing decades of corruption that ran deeper than even father had known. I moved through the rooms, touching familiar surfaces. Mother's perfect roses had withered in their vases. Father's legal books gathered dust in the library. The shattered teacup from that night still left tiny fragments that caught the light, impossible to completely sweep away. The doorbell rang. Ryan stood on the porch, looking older somehow, his confident facade replaced by something more genuine. The realtor said you'd be here today, he said. I let him in, watching as he took in the half-packed boxes, the spaces where family photos once hung. Charlotte's asking to see you, he added. I know, I got her letters. She's different now. The doctors say, it doesn't matter what the doctors say. I moved to father's desk, opened the bottom drawer. I found something you should have. The business plan was creased now, coffee-stained. Ryan's dream of his own company, the one Charlotte had used to control him. "I can't take this," he said. "You can. The inheritance. It was never about the money. Father knew that." I pressed the papers into his hands. It was about breaking free. His fingers trembled slightly. "I visited him, you know, before the end. He told me to watch out for you." "I don't need watching out for. Not anymore." A car pulled up outside, Dylan's familiar sedan. He'd been helping me navigate the legal aftermath, his role shifting from investigator to something I wasn't ready to name. "You're selling everything?" Ryan asked. "Donating most of it, starting fresh." I closed the desk drawer for the last time. The Thompson legacy needs to end. And Mother's connections, the people Charlotte worked with, are being handled. I didn't elaborate. Some truths were better left in FBI files. Ryan moved toward the door, then hesitated. "I keep thinking about what Charlotte said, about doing it for the family. Do you think she really believed that?" "I think she believed in power, in control. The same things Mother taught her to value." I looked around the empty room. But family, real family, it's something else entirely. Dylan appeared in the doorway, a quiet presence, waiting to help pack the final boxes. Ryan nodded to him, understanding passing between them. "The company," Ryan said, holding up his business plan. "I'll build it right, clean. Maybe that's how we start making amends. Maybe I didn't make promises. We'd all had enough of those." After he left, Dylan helped me carry the last boxes to my car. The sun had set completely now, leaving the house a looming shadow against the stars. "You never told me," he said, closing the trunk. "What was in your father's letter, the one from the beginning?" I touched my jacket pocket, where the worn paper still rested. A warning and a hope. I looked up at the house one last time. "He wrote that the truth doesn't set you free. What you do with it does." Dylan's hand found mine in the darkness. "And what are you going to do with it?" The question hung in the air as I locked the front door. Through the window, I could see the empty foyer where it all began. That family meeting that had shattered our carefully constructed world. "Live," I said finally. "Just live." We drove away, leaving the house and its shadows behind. In my rearview mirror, a single light flickered on in an upstairs window, a motion sensor triggered by nothing, or perhaps a ghost of what once was. The Thompson legacy wasn't quite dead. It lived in Charlotte's pending trial, in Mother's sealed confessions, in Ryan's chance at redemption. It lived in me, not as a burden now, but as a reminder that truth and justice aren't always the same thing. And that sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. I turned onto the main road, leaving the past where it belonged, behind me, but never quite forgotten.